What's going on, everybody? Nick here, and in this video, I'm going to cover the 3 common automation agency mistakes to avoid in 2024, as well as moving on into the 2025 new year. First and foremost, these are my mistakes. They're not the only ones. They're just the mistakes that I personally make due to my own decision-making biases and sort of like business history. I wish I could go back and fix these, because if I did, I'd probably be at least $1 million to $2 million richer right now. So take whatever makes sense to you out of this video and then just discard whatever isn't relevant. No gatekeeping. As always, I'm just going to show you everything, give you the sauce. I'm going to show you how to solve a lot of these mistakes with templates and that sort of thing. So first and foremost, my number one agency mistake was not starting cold email earlier. I lost well over $250,000 specifically because of this, because how effective cold email is in 2024. It is stupidly effective. When I say stupidly effective, I mean the cost to acquire a customer in cold email is something like 10 to 15 times at minimum lower than basically every other major approach right now. It is light years ahead of pay-per-click ads. It's light years ahead of any sort of like referral scheme. It is so goddamn cheap that if you aren't doing it right now, you're missing out and you're losing a ton of money. So automators in particular, aka people like you and I, people that know Make.com and Zapier and NA10 or GPT-4 or Claude, right? We also get to benefit disproportionately from cold email as relative to all other agencies out there. All other agencies have to send templated shitty emails that go like, hey, I saw your company and I want to increase your leads by 50% in the next 6 months or your money back. We don't have to do that. We get to say stuff like, hey, Sandra, I saw that you worked at Boardwalk. My third cousin twice removed, spent a semester there back in college. I'd love to connect. When people see that second email in the intro, they're like 99.99% more likely to click that freaking email. And the second that they're in, you've already done like the vast majority of your work as somebody that's pitching cold email. So you know enough AI to be dangerous. Even if you didn't, I would still recommend that you use cold email because it's still very profitable. But because you do, it's even more profitable. It's like orders and orders and orders of magnitude more profitable. So, if I could dial back the clock, I would have started cold email literally on day one. Hell, I probably would have started 5 years ago instead of going freaking door knocking and getting thrown out by security. I could have just sent a bunch of emails. Wouldn't have that been much easier. Anyway, the other point I'm going to make here is most other people in most other industries, they're going to cap out at a 1% to 2% response rate on average, unless their copy is incredible. But with personalization, like I talked about earlier with Sandra and Boardwalk, you can easily achieve 5% plus. And my top performing campaign ever is it was somewhere between 20 to 25%. Granted, this was like an event specific campaign where we acquired a big list from an event organizer and then reached out to them all using personalization. But still, it was absolutely ridiculous. And if you think about a 25% response rate, I mean, if a quarter of those people respond positively, you could send 1,000 emails and then literally get like 70 booked meetings. The cost per email on that is basically nothing. It's dumb. So some quick math here, just using the approach that I'm about to show you in a few minutes, you can send 1,000 emails a day and get anywhere between a 2.5 to 5% response rate, meaning that you'll get 25 to 50 responses for less than $15. Like, do the math there. The vast majority of like pay-per-click ads booked appointments usually cost anywhere between like $50 to $100 nowadays. You can literally get like an order of like 20 times that for $15. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to stop edifying cold email. The last thing I'll say is that it takes less than 2 hours to set up. And really the benefit is selling cold is actually one of the hardest ways to sell. Like, it might be easier to acquire the meeting, but it's usually a little bit harder to get the lead. That said, you can learn how to do it extraordinarily effectively. And when you do, if you learn how to sell to cold audiences, you can sell to literally anybody else on planet Earth. And essentially the rest of your business becomes a freaking cakewalk. So that's that. In terms of specific cold email mistakes, I think that a lot of people get started with cold email and then they end up floundering because of the following. The first is they're not using the right platforms. The only 2 platforms that I'd recommend, at least as of the time of this recording, is Instantly and SmartLead. They allow you to distribute basically like volume across dozens or hundreds of mailboxes simultaneously, and they do all the hard work sort of on the back end for you. I used to use platforms like Lemlist or Outreach.io or a bunch of these other ones where you had to pay per mailbox, and it ended up for an equivalent cost, it would have been something like $500 for what Instantly can do for you for like $50. So yeah, Instantly or SmartLead, don't waste your time with others as of now. These are basically just the best platforms on planet Earth for this specific purpose. The second mistake relative to cold email is that, you're not starting early enough. Cold mailboxes usually take between 14 to 21 days to warm up. So if you want to start sending today, you should have set up your mailboxes 2 to 3 weeks ago. That means that if you want to send in 2 to 3 weeks, you got to start setting up your mailboxes today. So one of my businesses is I run a community where I teach people how to use Make to make money on the internet. And a big thing that I'm seeing constantly come up is, man, I wish I had freaking set up my mailboxes earlier because now I have to wait 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks. If you run a campaign for 2 or 3 weeks and you're sending 200 or 300 emails a day, like if you do the math, that's anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 total emails sent out. If you do some response rate math on top of that, that's like, I don't know, at least like 15, 20 booked meetings that you are literally just throwing away because you decided to start later as opposed to earlier. The last big issue is in terms of the copywriting. My personal issue that I made when I started was I never talked to my prospects like people. I started kind of talk to them as like an idealized customer avatar. Cold email copy is very different from warm email copy. It's very different from newsletter funnels. It's very different from direct sales letters. And it's certainly very different than like scripts for video sales letters. In order to succeed, you need to be blunt. You need to be very straightforward. You need to be personalized. My tip, which I've seen circulated on Twitter and LinkedIn a bunch of times, is just talk to people like you would talk to them at the bar. Like if you're reaching across the bar, you'd be like, "Hey bro, what's going on, man? I saw your shirt. I really liked it. How can how can we connect?" Something like that. The point that I'm making is just cut all the bullshit out. Try and get it as short as humanly possible. Try and make it as visible in a phone screen as you can. Personalize it and just be very straightforward with what you're asking. And if you guys want more tips on how to actually write a cold email campaign, I have a whole video where I break down my 4-step copywriting formula, which has netted me tons of results similar to what I'm about to show you here. So in terms of a typical campaign that you can expect for cold email, this is just one that I was running for my community just a few weeks ago. I don't have any cold email campaigns for myself up right now, just because I've had to sort of like bottleneck. My community is sort of bottlenecking me along with my YouTube stuff. So I'm not actually running anything right now. This is just from a few weeks ago, July 5th up until maybe like July 11th. And we sent to 447 people. We had a reply rate of 4.3%, or we received 19. About 6 of those were people that were explicitly asking me, "Hey Nick, I'd love to book in your calendar." The copy that I wrote was this, and I'm just going to zoom in here and actually read the entire thing out for you. So bear with me. We have a personalization snippet up at the top. That personalization snippet is the AI sort of like approach, which will personalize the email intro so that it says like, "Hey Sandra, I saw that you worked at XYZ company, and maybe, you have a wonderful, cute Yorkshire Terrier. I love dogs, and I just thought that I'd reach out." So some personalized section up here that like really just instantly snags them. And then after that, this is what I wrote. I know this is a long shot, but I work specifically with creative agencies. Basically, I make project management system using apps like ClickUp or Monday that automate all of your creative and your copy and your articles and your ads, etc. I did this in my own agency, One Second Copy, and I scaled revenue to $92K a month at 50K margins. Similar business to yours, although obviously more specific to copywriting. Also, it was my own company, so I had a lot of latitude, but I want to see if I could build out a similar project management system for you, as I think your vertical is one where you could easily do more than $92K a month, assuming you had a good pipeline. Also, in my experience, project management is one of the major things that hold creative agencies back. I could do this upfront at no cost, and if you like it, if it makes sense, we could work together long term, pay for it all myself, and assuming you're in, I can get back to you in 72 hours with a video and a link to your CRM. Would this make sense for you? If so, do you want me just to go ahead and do it, or would you rather chat first? Then I was kind of sneaky and I said, "I'm kind of awkward over the phone, but we can chat if you're game." And then down here, I kind of big dicked it. And I was like, "P.S. if you're not sure who I am or skeptical, Google me." And I do this actually as kind of a hack, because the more people that Google you, the higher your Google search graph thing goes, right? Because it sort of illustrates a lot of people are interested in you. But when people Google me, they tend to like see my Google knowledge graph and they're like, "Oh, wow, that guy's pretty good. He's legit. Let me reply to his email." So this is what I'd call like pretty solid copy. It's nothing incredible, but it's like maybe average, a little bit above average. You guys can just copy and paste this sort of approach if you want. But again, I have a 4-step copywriting formula which breaks this down. If you're selling a different product from a CRM or a project management system, definitely check that out to sort of learn why I did what I did here. And then, we got a 4.3% reply rate across the 447 people that we emailed. Super simple, super straightforward, nothing difficult whatsoever. In terms of how to actually go about like sourcing the leads for this and how to actually go about sending them, if I could teleport this knowledge back in time, again, I'd literally have made more than an extra $250,000 over the last 18 months. What I would do is I would source a list using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I would then send it to a platform called Phantom Buster. I would then get those leads and export them to any mail finder. and then I'd use GPT-4 or Claude to personalize those emails. You could also use Apollo, which is sort of like a one-click platform. I have a link down in the description if need be, and then feed that into GPT-4 or Claude. And there are many other lead sourcing avenues. But the point that I'm making is in order to win in 2024 with an audience, you do have to personalize your messaging. Anything else is instantly moved to the spam box, and you're probably not going to get response rates of more than like 0.5%, maybe 1%. So with average copy and an average audience, you can expect around 3 to 5% response rates. If a quarter of those responses are positive, that means you could send 150 emails and book 1 meeting. Now, what if you were to send 300 a day? Well, then you're booking 2. What if you send 600 a day? Now you're booking 4. My math ain't so good. 1,000 a day, 7, right? I think. Could you even do 7 meetings in a day? Probably not. The point that I'm making is like, you can actually, like, if you're watching this video and you've never done this before, from now until 21 days from now, in that time period, you could actually have a lead generation funnel set up where you are generating between 1 to 7 meetings a day, and you could do it for less than $300 or $400 a month. It's like 15-ish bucks a day max. You could do that right now if you wanted to. All you would have to do is set all this stuff up, set a calendar reminder on your email warmups, and then voila, you're good. So really, if I could go back in time and start this process at the very beginning, I definitely would have. And I think that I can give you guys the benefit of foresight. If you're there, then you should start now too. All right, so big mistake number 2 is not productizing earlier. I probably lost well over $500,000 because of this. This is a little bit tougher to say. With cold email copy, it's just like how many meetings, what's your conversion rate, how much money do you make per deal? This is a little bit more up in the air, but I think it's probably at least $500,000. I definitely lost a lot of sleepless nights, I want to say. So what productization is it refers to making your service as templated and as straightforward as possible. If you're delivering a proposal automation system like I've shown in my previous videos, productizing that essentially refers to breaking down how to make that into just a series of simple steps that you could just take and hand to a monkey and the monkey could do it. Whether or not you delegate this work to anybody, that isn't important. You could actually just take that checklist and then just use it yourself. That's totally fine. But the process of productizing, the process of listing your work in terms of these deliverables and steps, that's extraordinarily important because the next time you sell it, you can make little improvements here or there to each one of those steps to save yourself money. And then that way your business starts being this like evolving machine that just gets better and better and better at acquiring and then optimizing for capital. So the issue is most automation agencies like mine, and this applies to software consultancies and software development agencies as well, is they'll start by offering custom implementations because their goal is they want to win any deal at any cost. And this is totally fine for your first few months. Like, I actually encourage all of the people in my community and that are watching this video to just do whatever it takes to get their first few jobs, because the second that they have a couple of jobs selling automation services, they learn so much about client management, client relationships, what it takes to build a system. You can worry about actually making it great after. Just worry about getting from 0 to 1 first. But after a few projects, you do need to move away from custom implementations if you want any chance at a successful business. Custom projects are incredibly difficult to hire for because you need to hire somebody that has this massive, diverse array of skills. It's also very difficult to scale because every project you get is going to be different. And the number one issue in automation and software development agencies is scope creep, where because it's such a complex system with so many interdependencies, you can't actually scope it out in advance perfectly. And so what the client and customer will request from you, it's usually going to be slightly different from what you deliver. And you're responsible for that gap essentially. And scope creep is a whole other video, which I'm going to get into, but it's something that we just want to avoid however possible. Sure, custom projects are interesting, but personally, I care more about making money. I think a lot of you guys do too. I love automation and I love working on stuff like this, but personally, if I could just make $1 million bajillion a day and then just build the same system out, I definitely would. That's one of the main reasons I'm in business, right? To buy myself this incredible lifestyle and work on things that I enjoy. So here are the main mistakes that people make when they try and productize or maybe don't productize hard enough. The first thing is they sell their ability rather than a specific project. So instead of selling a cold email lead generation system, they say, hey, how's it going? I'm a cold email lead generation specialist. I can build out anything for you. So the second sounds cool, and it's nice to brand your identity as a business and sell your own ability. But what this ends up being in practice is people think, okay, well, like warm emails are kind of similar to cold emails, right? So why don't we do a project with warm emails too? Can you make the system do X, Y, and Z on top of what you normally do? Oh yeah, great. Okay, sweet. Why don't we expand this, right? The point that I'm making is it's really cool and it's impressive, but selling your specific project is what makes you money. And you don't have to brand this as like, hey, buy this project, buy this product. But when you sell your service, essentially, if you could just make it as similar as possible every single time, you will go a very long way in automation, because now you have like a templated sort of thing, and you could just sell the templated thing and make some minor adjustments to it, as opposed to having to like rebuild the wheel from scratch every time. The second issue is not using project management tools. Project management tools like ClickUp, which I have screenshotted here, these basically force you to productize just because of the way that they're set up. I have an image here that I've attached, and this is just an example of how to productize the launching of an Instantly campaign and how to convert this broad product that you're selling into a list of steps. If you think about the project launch Instantly campaign, you can break this down to several subtasks. The first might be to connect the domains to the workspace. The second might be to connect the mailboxes to Instantly. The third might be to warm up and configure those mailboxes, complete the SPF and DMARC and DKIM and all that stuff, write the campaigns, right? These are all slightly different tasks. But this is how you can turn this broad service that you're providing into a list of steps that you can then hand off to a monkey, as I was speaking about earlier. You can then take advantage of project management platform tools like status updates, assignees, due dates, time estimates, time tracked. This is a standard operating procedure column, so you could literally embed steps and guides on how to do all those steps inside of the project management system. And this is what I'd consider a good quality automation project management system. And we're going to be making videos on how to build one for yourself pretty soon. The last thing is saying yes to projects that add revenue now, but will eat up your time and fulfillment later. One of the coolest guys in my community, and he just delivered like what we call a fireside chat, which is almost like an interactive workshop where he runs you through his business and how it works. His name is Sahil. He runs a great YouTube channel. And essentially, one of his big issues when he started, one of the reasons why he couldn't scale his business past, I don't remember what the figure is, maybe it was 10K, 15 or 20K a month, was because he'd accepted on these 2 or 3 really big custom projects, and they were huge, and they'd went on for 3 or 4 months. And sure, he added revenue technically the month that he closed the deal, but the time and energy that he had to spend managing this project over the course of that time period ended up eating up his ability to sell new projects. And so this is sort of like a short-term win at the cost of long-term potential and success. And as I've mentioned, you need to balance these. You shouldn't be all long-term. You shouldn't be all short-term. If you're starting out in your business, definitely be more short-term than long-term. If you're a little bit further on, then be more long-term than short-term. But this can definitely eat up your time, and this can really ruin your ability to fulfill later. So be careful saying yes to projects that add revenue now, but are just so big and you almost have no idea where to start. Especially if you've already won a couple projects, especially if you already sort of understand how automation works. Also, scope creep. Now, in terms of how to actually go out there and productize, this is a step-by-step checklist. This is basically what I recommend anytime like somebody jumps on a call with me for consulting services, anybody asks me in my community like, hey, Nick, how do you productize? How do you do this? It's like a 5 or a 6-step process. And I've written about this on my blog if you guys want to check that out. But essentially the first is you need to identify your deliverables. What does the customer actually see? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a simple example for a proposal generation system. This is a system that generates a PandaDoc link, for instance. You can click on the PandaDoc link and then you see a beautifully templated proposal with all of the right information and all the right fields. There's a form because the customer needs to fill out the form in order to, create that, right? What else? There's some emails that the customer and their client will get as a result of this process. So these are the deliverables, okay? The form, the proposal, and then the emails. This is what the customer sees. This is all that actually really matters for you because it's how the customer is going to interface with your system. If you think about it, the customer doesn't give a shit about your make.com flow or your Zapier flow or your N8N flow. They don't care about the code or the script that you've had to write in the background. They don't give a crap about any of that. The only thing they're going to care about is what they see. So that's what we're going to prioritize by. After you've identified your deliverables, you list them. You need to list the tasks that go into creating every one of those deliverables. So what do you and your team need to do to create those deliverables? If you think about the PandaDoc, for instance, well, if your customer is going to see a PandaDoc, what goes into the PandaDoc? Well, you need to design the PandaDoc, right? You could, maybe pick up a template and then make some minor adjustments to it or something. That's fine. But that is a task that you need to do. So maybe the task is identify best PandaDoc template. Then another task is customize PandaDoc template to the client, right? Maybe the form is create or duplicate the template of the form and to create the new form. Maybe the next step is update all of the logos with the client logo. I think you guys are getting my point, but basically you break down these big umbrella deliverables into subtasks. Once you have these subtasks, what you do is you group each of them based off of a job role. So the question you're answering now is, who do I need to hire to accomplish these jobs, right? Who do I need to hire to accomplish these tasks? And this is really the magic of productization, because how you do this can basically make or break your ability to scale your business. The number one issue that I think too many agencies do is they try and make these tasks as granular as possible, and then they try and hire like 17 people to do one thing. In reality, what you should be doing is you should be hiring one person to do as many things as humanly possible. And it's true that, the more general a skill set of a person gets, the less good they will typically be at any one particular thing, but you have to make some compromises there. For instance, an example I always bring up is when I was working with an agency 4 or 5 months ago, and they were like developing websites as part of their offering, and they had like they had a Figma designer, and then they had a Webflow designer, and then they had a copywriter, and then they had an account manager. So there are 4 people basically responsible to do this one job. What I did is I cut down like 3 of those roles essentially, and I made the Webflow designer I basically took the Figma designer and I said, okay, we don't need to do anything in Figma. We can just do it in Webflow. So let's just chop that. Then I said, okay, we don't need an account manager. We could just have the Webflow designer deliver it to the customer. So chop that. And I basically turned this big thing, which took God knows how many steps and how many messages back and forth, how many emails, into 2 roles that just perform substantially more efficiently with a much higher margin. So there's some magic to this. There's some thinking, but basically group these tasks into job roles as best you can and try and find similar tasks and assign them to the same job role. Once you've done this, just calculate how much it would cost you to do each one of these tasks and each of these, and how long in terms of time it would take to complete each of these tasks. Note that you can pay these job roles hourly. You can pay them via fixed price, and create whatever type of scheme you want. Maybe do 2, maybe do 1 for fixed price, 1 for hourly, just to calculate in your head how much money and time and energy it'll cost. Then once you have a list of each of these job roles with how much money it would take to create this project, well, now you have a great example of like your internal cost, your cost of goods sold to deliver, right? That's super straightforward. You've now done something that like 90% of businesses never do, and it only realistically takes you a few hours. Once you have this, all you do is you take this and then you ask yourself, how much money do I want to make? Like, what sort of profit am I looking for? Do I want 80% profit? Well, then I just multiply this by 5. If it costs me $1,000 to fulfill the project, well, then I just charge the customer $5,000, and then voila, now I've made 80% 80% margins gross. This is a super simple way to just fix your costs. It's also almost like a scientific way to like always be scaling your business because of how much profit you have. The last thing you do is you just take all of these tasks and all of these subtasks and you just create templates in your project management tool, just like I did up here. When the time comes, you then assign and then you just complete the project. Now, you don't have to assign to other people. For instance, I do most of the work myself for my own automation agency. I just have a virtual assistant that assists me with some minor tasks here or there. So, you could just do it yourself. Again, if you just follow a simple step-by-step process, the benefit here is even if you're doing it yourself, you can just improve the process a little bit with every step until you ultimately end up with like a totally different and better business. Okay, the last big thing that I want to talk about, and really the major mistake, and if you've noticed, I've kind of gone broader. I've gone from a cold email to more of like a business development thing, and now I'm going to talk about a life development thing. The last big mistake that I wish I could have gone back and righted myself for is that I wasn't focusing on high ROI activities. I've lost several $1 million because of this, not just because of my automation agency, but because of all of the time and energy that I spent on wasted low ROI activities between the ages of when I first started kind of venturing out into business, maybe 20-ish years old, to now. And, I'm 28. I'm going to turn 29 in a few months. Essentially, in any business situation, you have several options available to you. It's almost like an RPG, right? If you guys ever played a role-playing game, when some situation happens, you have a dialogue window. It's like, I could pick A, I could pick B, I could pick C, I could pick D. What do I say that yields me the best result? Anytime you're faced with a situation in business, you have the equivalent of a dialogue screen in front of you. And every one of the things that you could say or do has an estimated return on investment attached to it. Okay. To borrow from mathematics and AI specifically, because we're using AI, in our services, I figured I'd use an AI example. Your job as a business owner is to hill climb. If you guys are unfamiliar with what hill climbing is, check out this graph over here. This is a 3-dimensional graph, right? We have an x-axis here, then we have a y-axis up here, and then we have a z-axis up there. Basically, this just means that we are taking some function. You don't have to look at this mathematical equation over here. But this basically just means this is some function. This is what the function looks like if you were to graph it, okay? And notice how it looks. It's basically flat at the ends, and then in the middle, it rises sharply, and then it peaks. What hill climbing is it says, listen, let's say you find yourself at any point on this graph. Let's say we find ourselves right here, okay? I don't know why it got smaller when I zoomed in, but let's say we find ourselves right over here. If I move to the right, if I move back, if I move to the left, or if I move forward, which of those 4 options will yield me the best result? Which of these options will make me go up the most? I mean, if you look at it in this very simple contrived example, it's straightforward, right? If you just move 1 unit here, you're going straight up basically as straight line as you can up to this peak. Now, this is a simple and somewhat contrived mathematical example, but the point that I'm making is, as a business owner, your job is to assess where you are on this landscape of possible business decisions. And then it's to think, okay, how do I get to that peak as quickly and effectively as possible in as few steps as possible? This is basically what AI is doing when it's learning, by the way, which is pretty interesting. But anyway, you do this by moving in the most positive direction. So ever since I started thinking like this, and ever since I also started implementing bottleneck thinking, which I talked about in a couple previous videos, my ROI on all the decisions that I make on a day-to-day basis has shot way the hell up. For instance, right now I'm recording a ton of YouTube videos. And the reason why I'm recording YouTube videos is because I looked at the amount of money that I made over the course of the last, 5 or 6 months. And then I looked at how much money was attributable to YouTube. And then I looked at how many videos I'd posted. And then I divided the money that I'd made as well as the subscribers that I'd gotten by the number of videos. And I said, okay, well, shit, on average, one video gives me, 350 subscribers per 5 months. What if I were to extrapolate this over the course of the next year? How much money does every video and how many subscribers does every video make me? This is probably the highest ROI action I can do, which is just why I'm doing it right now, just to be transparent with you. So I am attempting to move in the highest ROI direction in my own life. And as a business owner, you should be trying to do this in yours as well. The highest ROI action is rarely the most complex one. What I mean by this is a lot of people, because we watch tons of movies and television and films growing up, we tend to think of these rich, successful business owners as these guys in suits and ties with sunglasses on that are looking at these big spreadsheets and charts and visualizations in some busy New York finance office. And we think, damn, those guys are smart. They deal with complex stuff on a daily basis. Well, if you want the truth, it's usually the simplest and most straightforward shit that you do that yields you the most money, not the most complicated stuff that you do that yields you the most money. I think personally that it's not intelligent. Like I think I talk about this in the next page, but I personally think that it's not, if you look at all of your friends and all the people in your network and you ask yourself, who's the most intelligent person there? The most intelligent person is rarely the one that is also the richest. Intelligence is not the thing that you need to look for, or complexity of what they do is not the thing that you need to look for to determine how to generate money. In our capitalistic game, for instance, intelligence is not the main thing that makes you win. Intelligence points aren't directly correlated to your net worth. Well, I mean, they're probably correlated in some way, but anyway. So practically what this means, essentially what I'm getting at, is if you are under about $25,000 a month, which I think most people watching this video probably are, your high ROI activities are usually sales calls. Their daily email management, their daily DMs, their daily job applications. Basically, they're focused on driving revenue as quickly and effectively as humanly possible. And if you are focused on anything else that is not sales calls or daily email management or DMs or whatever, it is a strategic error. And it's usually why you're not getting anywhere as fast as a lot of the other people that you're seeing go. Here are a couple of high ROI mistakes that I think a lot of people make and that I definitely myself was guilty of making when I was first starting out with this business model. The first thing is I focused a lot on things that were indirectly useful, but they weren't directly useful to the task of generating money, of essentially getting revenue. I spent weeks building my website, months learning skills before I entered the market. And realistically, I spent a few years that I didn't have to trying to think about what's my identity or what are my core values prior to actually starting my business. And I understand that this is quite controversial here. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, what the hell? Core values, your identity, your skills, these are all very important. It's true, they are. But counterintuitively, the fastest way to gain those skills and to learn your identity and your core values is usually just to go out there and do shit. And if you spend all this time thinking before you actually just go out there and do shit, your core values and your identity, they're usually going to be wrong. You're usually going to have to readjust them when you actually enter the real world. So interface with the real world as much as humanly possible. And if you think about your task as an automation agency owner, well, if you're not making money, it's a hobby, it's not a business. If you want it to be a business, you need to go out there and make money. And if you want to make money, identify the things that are highest ROI to you and just do them relentlessly. The second issue is not spending your time on the things that are most important to you. So if growing your revenue is important, and you have, let's say, 6 hours a day to work. I don't know, you're juggling, I know a lot of people that are watching these videos, they're not in my position, which is quite blessed, where I am, I basically have all of my day available to work. I don't have any dependents. I don't have super strenuous relationships. I don't have people that are, well, I have people that are counting on me, but I don't have anywhere near this sort of like daily obligation to do things as other people, which is why I can work as much as I want to. But let's hypothetically say you don't have all day like me. You have 6 hours per day to work. Well, if you spend 4 of those hours doing non-revenue related activities, if you spend that time doing, I don't know, bookkeeping, or if you spend that time on the phone with current clients, but you're not actually like selling them or upselling them or moving the needle forward, you will not grow effectively. And so you need to count the number of hours that you're spending in a day on task, count how productive and the output that you're producing, and just ask yourself, how can I reallocate those towards things that are driving the needle? And I'll give you some examples in a moment. The last thing is not committing to small daily activities. So many things in business, and this is a really interesting thing that I just came across earlier, but many things in business do not scale proportionally to the effort that you put in. They scale permissively based on whether you showed up that day. What I mean by this, and YouTube is a great example, I could sit down and I could record 30 videos today. And if I post all 30 videos today, I'm only going to grow a little bit. But if I recorded one video every day and then I posted every video for the next 30 days, I'd grow a little bit on one day, a little bit the next day, a little bit the next day, and I'd continue going. This is a permissive relationship. It's not like a scaling relationship. It's not proportional. There are so many things in business and in life where you just need to show up every day. And if you just show up every day and you just do a little bit every day, because it's a marathon and not a sprint, you'll go so much farther. Cold emails, for instance, if you show up just a little bit every day, just 10 minutes every day of checking your email inbox and responding to things as they come in and that sort of deal, you're going to go a lot farther than if you spend 7 hours staring at an empty inbox, right? Daily job applications, if you're hunting for a job like a 9-to-5 or something like that, or a corporate position, you're going to go way further if you just clock in a little bit every day than if you just sit down for 5 hours and try doing a bunch of apps. This is basically like directly counterintuitive to what most of us did in school, which is we wait until the last second, cram for the exam, did 14 hours of work, and then handed in a 90% or whatever. Okay, 90% if you're lucky, let's be real. But I guess teachers were trying to tell you not to do this, by the way. So that's pretty funny. That's really funny. I definitely did not take their advice. I would cram at the very last second. Maybe school isn't exactly the perfect example, but the point that I'm making is just so many things in life require you to just show up and do a little bit today. Like the gym, for instance, you could work out like 15 hours one day. That's not going to do shit for you. You need to work out like an hour, hour and a half, maybe 3-4 days a week. And you need to stretch that out over the course of a year to see really good results. So identify the things that scale proportionally versus permissively, and focus on the things, or at least for the things that scale permissively, just focus on showing up every day. Okay, so here's some tips that I wish I could transport back in time and give to my younger self. I'm going to call them hill climbing tips, because again, that's basically what we're doing, and I want us to frame our minds in the context of like, okay, like what direction do I need to move in order to go as far up as humanly possible? I have a little simple exercise that I want us to do together. The first is we're going to list 5 things that you can do right now to make more money. For each of these things, we're going to write down the complexity of this task, the estimated % success rate of this task, and then the estimated impact of this task in dollar terms. We're then going to divide all these out with a formula that I'll show you in a second. The reason why I'm doing this is because this is a tool to help us think. We're going to use this tool. Let me just go to a different tab here. We're going to use this tool to demonstrate what I mean by hill climbing, and then ultimately to help us prioritize our day a little bit more effectively. So this is a little spreadsheet template that I have, and you guys can feel free to copy this if you need. But essentially on the left-hand column here, we have a bunch of actions. We have set up cold email campaigns, send offer to email lists, set up Upwork profile, start posting in communities, whatever. Then we have a complexity, and then I'm just rating that at a 1 to 5. So 2, 4, 3, 3. Then we have an estimated success rate of 80%, 50%, 80%, 50%. Then we have an estimated impact, and I meant to do this in terms of dollar terms. So I guess I actually need to go back to this tab here. Then I need to change this so that this is a $sign. Okay, great. So this is what our spreadsheet looks like. And basically what I've done is I've taken this formula here, success times impact divided by complexity. And the numbers here aren't important. This is just like a thinking tool, just a way for you to think about things. Like, what should I do today? Well, what has the highest likelihood of success? What has the highest impact? And then what's the least complex thing that I could do? And if you just ask yourself that question every day, you're going to go a lot farther than somebody that doesn't, because you're going to be constantly optimizing where you are on that hill. So the setup cold email campaign, in terms of complexity, is pretty straightforward. You could just follow a step-by-step guide. I'm going to call that a 2. The estimated success probability of this might be 80%. I don't really think that there's really a way you could screw up setting up a cold email campaign, because you could just follow a step-by-step guide. I might be wrong. This is an estimated success percentage rate. This isn't the actual 100% success rate. If I were to send 1,000 emails a day over the course of the next year, let's say, and let's just call this estimated yearly impact, how much money do I think I could make? Well, I think I could make $300,000. Okay. Well, the priority there now is, I don't know, 120,000. The number isn't super important, as you'll see in a sec. What about send an offer to my email list? Well, I think the complexity of this is a little bit higher, because I need to write this offer, and that's a little bit tougher. What's the estimated success rate? Well, if I rate this offer, I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of variables here. I'm not very confident in my ability to do so. What sort of yearly impact do I think I could do if I send this offer? Well, I think if I send this offer right now, maybe I can make $50,000. Setting up my Upwork profile, I'm going to give that a 3. I'll say there's an 80% chance I'm going to do this right. I'm going to say the estimated yearly impact on this is $250,000. Posting in communities, I'm going to call it a 3. I'm going to say it's a 50% chance, and I'm going to say the estimated yearly impact of posting in communities is, $300,000 as well. All you do then is you take this priority tip and you just sort it based off the biggest thing. So the biggest thing here that I've estimated is this priority to set up a cold email campaign, for instance. The second is to set up my Upwork profile. The third is to start posting in my communities. And the last is to send the offer to my email list. This is a very simple and somewhat contrived example. You don't have to take it literally. It's just a thinking tool. But the point that I'm making is you could structure your thinking in such a way where basically at every point in time, you're just asking yourself really quickly, okay, is this the complex thing? Is this the thing that has the highest likelihood of impact? Is this the thing that has the highest estimated success chance? As long as you're asking yourself these things, you'll constantly be moving in a much higher ROI direction than otherwise. My other tip for hill climbing is that making money is a lot simpler than most people think. And it's taken me a while to realize this myself. But essentially, it's not the most intelligent person that you know that makes the most money. It's instead almost certainly the most committed person you know. Like, sit down and ask yourself right now, pause the video, and try and figure out, of the 5 closest people to you, for instance, who's the most intelligent, and then maybe who's the most financially successful. Maybe broaden that a little. Maybe your whole family, maybe your cousins, your second cousins, that sort of thing. I'll guarantee you that it's not the person that's the smartest in terms of IQ or how they did on their SATs. It's the person that is the most committed, the person that is willing and capable and does show up every day to do the stuff that needs doing. So if you think about it, if making money is a lot simpler than most people think, and then most people also just spend all their time learning tasks and learning things and not actually going out and doing the things, one of your highest ROI actions as a business owner is probably just becoming a more committed person. If you're not, you can work on it. There are a variety of ways to improve your ability to form habits, your ability to set and achieve successful goals, and that sort of thing. But yeah, those are my 2 hill climbing tips. Essentially, becoming a more committed person is probably usually the higher ROI task for most of you. So focus on becoming more committed. Focus on restructuring your thinking to think in terms of high ROI actions as opposed to just I have to do all this stuff today. And then spend time on things that are important to you. All right, those are my 3 common mistakes that I wish I could go back in time and avoid in my automation agency. I hope you guys like this video. I had a lot of fun putting it together. My closing thoughts here are just to start cold emails early, start productizing as soon as you get a couple of customers, because that's all you need in order to figure out whether or not this business model is validated and it works for you. And then anchor your thinking in terms of ROI. I had so much fun talking about this, as always. If you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.